What is up, all you real estate loving individuals? This is episode number one. Yeah, number one, numero uno of the Real Estate Take podcast with your host, myself, Wendell Butler. This is your go-to podcast with tons of information regarding the current real estate market, where you can get various real estate professionals' current take on different areas of real estate. For today's guest, we have no other than Andrew Freed. Andrew started off on a W-2 track as a project manager and ascended through the corporate ladder from company to company, always looking for the next higher paying job. Then after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, like many others, including myself, he came to the realization that the rat race is a 30 to 40-year journey that seems like an eternity. Why not take the leap and try for financial freedom in the next 10 years? Worst case, you can always go back to the workforce and take the traditional retirement path to 65. After that epiphany, he was determined to take action. He obtained a home line of credit, a HELOC, which we'll jump into later, on his one-bedroom condo in Boston and bought 7 deals over the course of 2 years. He purchased 4 3-families and 1 5-unit building in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he also joined 2 apartment building syndications as a limited partner. One was in Lowell, Massachusetts, and the other was in Phoenix, Arizona. He currently still works his W-2, as well as owns and self-manages 18 rental units, and is an investor-focused real estate agent in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. So let's welcome Andrew Freed to the Zoom. You know, Andrew, they're calling you the King of Worcester. What's going on here? Have you been just grinding, getting going in real estate really fast? It seems like you have.
Hey, I first want to mention I am extremely honored to be your first guest on this fantastic podcast. And yeah, it's been a crazy ride over the past 2 years. I went from 1 unit to 18 units, self-manage everything. And yeah, I've been killing it as a real estate agent this year as well. So things have really been falling into place, and I am extremely grateful for the opportunity that has come my way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I've been working with you as well, so I've seen you just all of a sudden expand your growth. So it's been awesome to watch that journey, and I'm excited to get more into it, to give back to the community so they can learn a little bit more about your story, and just maybe some lessons that you could teach them from what you learned over the couple years. So just to start, where are you originally from? And can you go a little deeper into your backstory and what got you into real estate as a whole? Like what really put your mind into real estate and made you make that leap?
Well, hey, it's a funny story. You know, growing up, my parents always asked me, "What do you want to be when you're growing up?" You know, some people say firefighter, other people say astronaut. I told them I want to be rich. So I didn't know exactly how that was going to happen, but I was determined to get it done. And unfortunately, it took me a good 30 years to realize that real estate is the easiest way to that path. So that's kind of where my journey with money started. I've always been good with money, and I've always been a saver, but I never was an investor until I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'd always, put money socked away in my 401k, put money in the stock. But never really learned how to leverage that money into cash flowing assets until I read that wonderful purple book that we all know and love. So yeah, my journey kind of started, just the traditional route of just getting my bachelor's, getting my master's, getting a job as a project manager at a research institution, always looking for kind of the higher paying job. I was kind of looking to escape the rat race, thinking that the higher paying job would get me there. And then when I finally achieved that salary, I realized, technically I was kind of paycheck to paycheck. Yeah, I mean, maybe had 6 months of reserves, but after that case, if I lost my job after 6 months, I'd be just like everybody else. And that frightened me. That absolutely frightened me. And what frightened me more after reading that wonderful purple book was the fact that, I essentially have to give up 30, 40 years of my life before I can actually enjoy the life that I want to live. And that was frightening. That was absolutely terrifying to me. So I decided at that very moment that I would take the leap and give it everything I had. And worst case scenario, I would just retire like everybody else at 65. I have a huge time horizon in front of me. And that's kind of what got me on my real estate journey. And I'm happy to expand from there, but that's kind of the inception of kind of my journey into real estate.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of followed a similar path as well with I was going from job to job trying to find a higher paying job, the next one trying to get out of that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. And then I'm sure a lot of other people as well read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, everybody talks about it. And he kind of hits on how to get out of that current rat race, the wheel that keeps turning and you just go nowhere. And one of that is getting into buying assets that, pay you money. But yeah, I mean, he was big on real estate. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons that I went into it as well. And making that large, scary leap that people think. But it's not that scary if you get into it. It's just numbers based, and as long as you read and educate yourself and really learn, and just do the correct analysis of every property, meet people, learn from people, it's really not that difficult. So speaking of that, would you mind telling us about your first deal? Like what was going through your mind? What was occurring, and what was the actual deal, and why did you go for it?
Yeah, I mean, and just going back to your point, I mean, there's opportunity lost in doing nothing. Everybody's scared, everybody's worried about taking the leap, taking the risk. But at the same time, if you do nothing, the status quo is your future, right? So if you are paycheck to paycheck, your future is going to be retiring at 65, 70, 75, maybe working forever. So there is opportunity cost in doing nothing that I think people fail to take into the analysis. But in regards to my first investment property, I decided that the easiest route to financial independence, which that's my goal, is to achieve financial independence, travel the world, have a great impact on people, give back eventually. That's kind of my goal. But my thought process was I really have to bring down my expenses, right? If I can get my expenses to $3,000 a month, financial independence is very achievable with 15, 20 units, $200-$300 cash flow per property. So what I did was I bought a 1-bedroom condo in Boston back in 2015, simply due to the fact that I didn't want to pay somebody else's mortgage. I didn't want to pay rent. So that's kind of what I decided to do. I went the traditional route of bringing 20% down because I didn't know you could bring less. Like I wasn't very knowledgeable in real estate, but it worked out for me. I bought a condo. I bought it for $222 in Boston, 1-bedroom condo. It appreciated to about $400,000 during COVID. Wow. So at that point, I kind of took out a $200,000 line of credit, and I used that money to buy my next 7 or so deals. My first deal was a house hack in Worcester, Massachusetts. I bought a 3-family. I bought it for $560,000. I utilized an FHA loan, so I was able to only grab around $45,000 for my line of credit. And I got into one unit, and the other 2 rented for about $1,600. My mortgage was around $3,200. So more or less, I mean, I was living for free. I mean, I obviously had to cover repair, CapEx, vacancy, things of that nature, but it was absolutely cheaper than paying rent. And from there, then my savings rate went through the roof. I was actually saving around $4,000 to $5,000 a month. I was probably living on around 30 to 40% of my W-2 income. So that really kind of propelled me to kind of go to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, they say that your biggest expense is your housing expense. So the number one thing, that if you can cut down your housing expenses, then your savings will shoot up very fast. And it seems like that was your goal, and that's what you did. And that's what house hacking really is great for. It's an opportunity to cut down your housing expense, which is usually it's usually 30 to 50% of people's expenses. So if you cut that down, then all of that money extra can go to savings and go to other investments, and it can really help you grow financially and just comfort wise, because now you don't have to think about that huge bill that's coming down for your mortgage. You have other people that are paying for it, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
to your point, I really kind of think of real estate kind of like a chessboard. And I mean, when you buy 20% down investment properties, those are very much pawns. It takes you a very long time to get that, and they're not very effective. But the fantastic thing about a house hack is I very much think of it like a queen. It's very mobile. You can save yourself $1,500, $2,000 a month. You know how many rental units that would take to save that out of your own income? That'd be around, 5, 10 rental units. So you can really cut through the amount of units you need by just doing a simple house hack.
Yeah, and like you said, with most investment properties too, you need like 20 to 25% down to even obtain. But if you're doing a house hack and you get like a government loan or a low down payment loan that you can utilize, you're leveraging an enormous amount of like an asset that you're only putting down like 3.5% or 5% down for. So you, like you said, you only used about $40,000 to obtain your first 3-family. Compared to if you went the investment route, it probably would have had been in the hundreds of thousands. So just doing that alone to obtain the property, and now you're saving 100% of your housing expense. It just makes sense. And then once you do move out of that property, it's going to cash flow for you, which I'm sure. I mean, you already did, so now it's cash flowing for you, which is great. But and another thing about house hacking too that people don't understand is that it's a little uncomfortable. Can you go a little in depth of how you think it was uncomfortable for you at all? Because that's one of the biggest concerns with people. So they talk about, they don't want to have tenants, they don't want to deal with that, they don't want to have people living above them or below them or beside them that they have to deal with collecting rent. Can you go through like the process of that and what was going through your mind when you started house hacking with that portion of it?
Absolutely. I mean, so for me, I lived in Boston. I lived in a swanky 1-bedroom apartment, built in 2007. It was everything you would hope for. When I gave up that life of comfort to move out to Worcester, which is an hour from my job, in a 3-family, where I didn't know anybody in Worcester. I have no friends in Worcester, and I'm living in a 3-family with other tenants. Some people might say, that's too much for me. That's too difficult. I'm not willing to do that. Oh, the question you should ask yourself is, what's the time horizon you want to make to reach financial independence? If you're trying to reach financial independence in 3, 5, 7, 10 years, you got to put yourself in uncomfortable scenarios. You have to be willing to sacrifice and do things other people aren't willing to do, because financial independence is a concept that not many people achieve. So the question is, what are you willing to sacrifice, right? If you're not willing to go through that level of pain, then make your time horizon 20 years to reach financial independence. However, that was not my goal. My goal was to reach financial independence as quickly as possible and to uproot my life if needed to achieve that goal. I've done very well in the last years. I've accumulated 18 units, but it's been a lot of sacrifice. I've house hacked twice. I've very much lived like a college student. Over the past 2, 3 years, I haven't really gone on vacation months, a lot, because I've been grinding, but yeah. I see the end goal, and that's what matters to me, is the end goal, so I'm prepared to make the sacrifices needed to achieve that financial independence and achieve the life that I want to live.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand that you have to make sacrifices to get to your goal that you want to achieve. So you got to balance out like what you're going to sacrifice and what you're not going to sacrifice. But one of the biggest things for house hacking is definitely making yourself a little uncomfortable. Maybe getting roommates, maybe getting obviously having a couple tenants that you have to landlord for. Yeah. But that alone, I mean, it's just going to make you grow. And then once you grow, you can go to the next level, and it's just going to make you a better person. Plus, financially, it's going to help you out a lot to help you reach your goal.
Yeah, and not allowing life creep to move up on you. I mean, I make a 6-figure salary, but yet I'm living in a 3-bedroom unit with a roommate. Like, you got to do what you got to do to make it happen, and you have to be very conscientious of not allowing that life creep to not allow yourself to accumulate the cash flowing assets that as quickly as you would like.
Yeah, I think I always see like these memes and videos about it, but one of the biggest problems with people making more money is that they start spending more money. So they basically allow, as they're growing, they start expending more on liabilities. So they start buying better cars, they start buying, unnecessary clothing or like unnecessary like appliances and stuff. But as long as you just kind of stay within what you're doing now, even when you make more money, and then putting that money into more investments, that's going to propel you into financial freedom much more quick. And then you can maybe spend some money on liabilities and have fun. But until then, like one of the biggest problems with some investors is they make money and then all of a sudden they just start spending it like that. And they're like, oh, well, now I have no money to spend for other investments. And I'll have, I'm not financially free because I'm back depending on my 9-to-5 job. But, we talked a lot about house hacking. And as you said before, you're a new real estate agent. Well, not really that new. You're a few years in, so I'll call you a veteran. You have a niche, right? And your niche is more investment type based, and you kind of do focus on helping people house hack. So is there a reason that you do that? Is it just from your prior experience doing it, or do you enjoy like crunching the numbers and helping people reach that next step to financial freedom? What's your insight into that?
To your point, I absolutely thrive on coaching and guiding others. I'm a real estate agent for fun. I have a W-2 job, and this is what I do to enjoy myself, is helping others kind of achieve their goals. But to your point on why I chose the kind of niche, I'm in my mind, I'm very much kind of the multifamily Worcester, Massachusetts guy. That's what I focus on. That's my niche. And it's primarily due to the fact that, becoming an expert in a market takes hundreds, if not thousands of hours of work, right? Of knowledge building, of learning. And I simply don't have the capacity to do that in every market. And I don't think I would do my clients justice or myself justice if I tried to advise them on a market I did not know. So I very much chose to niche on multifamily around Worcester. And I know that market very well. I know what things trade for. I know what rents are at. I can underwrite deals in minutes, if not 30 seconds. So I'm pretty familiar with the market. And as a result, when people, think of multifamily in Worcester, they think of me, right? So I get a lot of leads because people know I'm the multifamily Worcester guy. So that's kind of been a big foundational piece to my success, is really going a mile deep in an inch, going very deep in a very small area or niche. That's been one of the keys to my success for sure.
Yeah. And I see you also do some meetups as well. And people always walk up to you and they're saying like, oh, it's Andrew Freed. It's Andrew Freed. He's the, I didn't know you're going to be here. So yeah, you're getting some popularity around there. So you got to keep doing what you're doing. Definitely, like once you find that niche, that as you gain more expertise in it, that's where you really start to grow, and that's where you can like help people more. Because once you become an expert in that field, you can just do better for everybody. And what a lot of people don't realize too is that if you try to be an expert at everything, then you really can't do that. You can only be an expert at one thing. And then you can be good at a lot of things, but if you're an expert at one thing, you can really take off and do really well for yourself, which is what you're doing, which is awesome. Cool. So we touched a little bit on your first property, and you've had a few deals in between there. I just want to now go over your most recent deal that you got into. I think it was that 5-unit in Worcester. What did you see with that property? What is the plan for it, and what are you currently doing with it? And what was different from your first investment compared to this one? Like what changed in mental wise, like learning wise, and going into it wise, like crunching numbers and stuff?
So the big piece was just knowing my market. I purchased a 5-unit 4 or 5 months ago. And I saw within minutes when it hit the MLS, and just based off the price and knowing the average cost per unit in Worcester, I knew it was a slim and hot deal. So I think it was 5 units for $650,000. I think, they're trading at approximately $130 a unit. when normally in Worcester, you're probably looking at 175, 200K a unit. So just based off the cost per unit alone, I knew it was a slamming hot deal. And I only knew that because I've been in the Worcester market for a couple of years now, and then, essentially know like the back of my hand. So the first thing was recognizing the deal instantly. I knew it was a deal. I set in a blind offer. The agent turned it down, but he put us to the top of the buyer list, and he told us to show up to the open house. We showed up to the open house. At that point, I actually walked the property, and just based off me being an agent in the market, being involved with a lot of real estate, I can analyze a property to see if it's going to be, very expensive to get this property to stabilization. Is it going to be cheap? What are the costs associated with this particular property? After walking the property, it was in great condition. So I was definitely ready to put an offer at that point. Come around the offer, some people try to nickel and dime the seller. My strategy is I try to be as transparent as possible and try to provide all the facts up front and get my concessions up front, right? This was a great deal at $650. The property was in fantastic condition. I'm not trying to nickel and dime the seller. I literally just offered them asking and told them the inspection was informational only. They took it. They liked the ease of the deal. They knew I was an experienced investor in the market, and that's why they actually chose me. From there on out, the loan product. The fact that I've been in real estate now, I could actually negotiate loan products better. So I found a small local credit union. I think it was GFA that I ended up working with. And because I was able to negotiate financing, I actually put a couple small credit unions against each other on the property. I ended up negotiating 12 months interest only period to stabilize the property. I also negotiated the bank to fund me $50,000 of renovation money. And I believe they gave us a 5.5 with a 5-1 arm. So because of my knowledge, I was actually able to negotiate a better loan product. And then lastly, just the fact that I've been through multiple stabilizations, I was able to bring the revenue on the building up by 40% just in like 2 or 3 months, just because a lot of the tenants had Section 8, and I knew the process of going to Section 8 and getting it bumped to market rent. So just the fact that I've been in the market, I've done the research, I've talked with the lenders, I know what a good price per unit is, I know repair budgets, all of that culminated into getting a fantastic deal that I'm hoping to refinance our money out in probably 6 months or so.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, guys, you heard it here first. You can get some good deals on MLS. You don't have to always go off market. I think, Andrew, have you gotten all your deals off of MLS too? Just from knowing the market well, or was there a couple off market that you got?
I've gotten a majority of my deals on market. I've gotten one property for myself off market. It was my neighbor. He owned the 3-family right across the road. And the reason I got that deal is because people knew that I bought multis in Worcester. The previous owner of the 3-family I house had, he was my neighbor. He called me up one day. He's like, the neighbor next door is trying to sell his property. He's outside talking to neighbors. Are you interested? I threw on a business show. I went there. I walked the property. It was a fair deal for a fair price. I didn't try to negotiate. I just made it easy, asked for my concessions up front, shook his hand, and we closed with the price we mentioned. And it was a great deal. That property cash flows extremely well for me. I probably cash flow about $1,000 a month on that property. And I bought that majority with HELOC, and I cashed out some stock. So that was a great purchase as well. The other properties that I would call off market because they're not generally easy to find. I did obtain 2 syndications as well as a limited partner. One, which sold in a year and doubled my money, which is a fantastic investment. The other one is a 190 unit building in Phoenix, Arizona, that I'm currently invested in, and I get, monthly cash flow off it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I mean, it just goes to show, like, if you just know people in the market, if you network well in the market and you just, people know you, then deals can kind of fall into your lap sometimes, which is pretty awesome. And if they're a good deal, I mean, it's even better because you don't have to do any work. It just fell into your lap, and now you just got to find the funding to get it done. But other than that, I mean, it's just cool to see that people find deals on MLS as well, because a lot of people say, a lot of investors are like, you can't find any deals on MLS, the numbers don't make sense. Well, if you know the market well enough and you can know what you can do with a property, people on MLS are still selling for what they think they could sell for. So they might not know the market as well as you. So those are opportunities still that you can get good deals on MLS, even if they're on market. You just have to know the market and be experienced in it, which is obviously Andrew is, and I've had some MLS deals as well that worked for me. It just, you just have to be careful with the numbers and know the market really well. But let's go back to that 5-unit real quick. Is there anything that you have learned from jumping from 3-family to the 5-unit building, because that is now in commercial? So it's a difference between residential to commercial. So just so people know, 1 to 4 units are considered residential properties, and then anything above 4 units is commercial. So you have to open up a business, you have to get a different type of loan and lending for it, and it's a different process compared to a 1 to 4 unit. So what can you tell us about what you learned from that process of jumping to a commercial building, and then any other learning opportunities within dealing with tenants in there, within dealing with Section 8? I'm sure people would love to hear about Section 8 a little bit.
Totally.
Just touch on that a little bit for us.
So the biggest thing I learned with commercial properties is the city very much scrutinizes those properties much more than 1 to 4 unit properties. They pretty much view you as a sophisticated investor at that point. And as such, permits are a lot more challenging to get approved. Once you do get 5 units, you have a lot more regulation that you have to stick with. I mean, you have to install sprinklers, like more comprehensive smoke alarms. You can get system-wise, it can get a lot more expensive. So that, but what I will say is one of the things I do love about commercial is the fact that the value of the property is based on the income it produces. So what makes that truly amazing is the fact that I can get rewarded for doing a good job stabilizing property. For example, for a 1 to 4 unit, I could triple the revenue on that property. That property is still going to sell for similar properties in that area, 1 to 4 units. It's not based on the income of the property, it's based off what everything else is selling around that area. Commercial properties are truly wonderful because when you do go through the work of increasing the revenue and stabilizing it, you can actually get rewarded with that via a cash out refinance, right? So the reason why I love commercial, it allows me to continue the velocity of my money to keep buying more assets with the same money, right? Yeah. Additionally, what I love about commercial properties is going into a recession, I want the ability to take my money out easily, right? Mm-hmm. And with 1 to 4 units, with values potentially dropping, and as a result of them being based on the sales comp approach, it would be very challenging to get my money out in that sort of situation. However, with a commercial property, it would be absolutely less challenging as long as I stabilize it and increase the revenue dramatically. I have plenty of other lessons. I'm happy to continue if you have any other questions, but those are some of the big lessons I learned with commercial.
Yeah. And just to touch on that again, so 1 to 4 unit properties, they don't really use a thing called an income approach when the appraiser is appraising it. So what that is basically your gross rent, and they find out how much you net after all your expenses of the property, and then they can kind of figure out compared to other properties how much that property is worth. But for 1 to 4 unit properties, they don't really use that as much. They more use a sales comparison approach. So that's just based on the price per unit, or like if a certain similar property within the 1 mile radius have sold in the past 90 days or so, they're going to use that as a comp to show how much your property is worth. So it really is dependent on the market and what people will pay for those properties. Commercial wise, they kind of combine the two. So they do kind of a sales comparison approach, which they see how much those buildings are selling for, but they also include an income approach as well. So they're going to take all the units income. So say it's like a 5 unit like Andrew's, and they're going to take all the rental income from that, and they're going to minus the expenses, and they're going to figure out a net operating income. and then you're going to figure out the average cap rate of the area, which is kind of think of it as the percent return you would get if you bought the property cash. So for Worcester, it's probably around like a 6.5% or so, maybe even lower, but 6.5% is pretty good. So then you use that number and the net operating income, and you divide them by each other, and that's going to give you how much the property is worth. So if Andrew buys that 5 unit and it's currently grossing like $40,000 a year, and then he increases it to like $80,000 a year, that's potential to double the property value just by increasing the rents of that commercial property. But if he did that in a 1 to 4 unit property, if they was making $20,000 a year and he increased it to $40,000, that's not really going to help with increasing the value of that property as much as with a commercial property, which I love commercial as well. It's more of a numbers game, and it makes more sense to me, because when you get a property and make it worth more by increasing the rents, actually, it's cool that you can like kind of, what's it called, like force appreciate it, I guess you would say, but by just increasing rents and kind of managing the property better. But including managing
and to that particular point, I mean, I bought the building around 4,000 revenue, and pro forma on the building is around 8,300, right? And as a result, I bought it for 650. Based off the cap rate and that revenue, it'd be worth around $800,000 to $900,000. So just going through the process of increasing the revenue would, create, 150, 200, $250,000 worth of equity that I can tap into.
Yeah. And that's just like, it's just amazing. Like commercial real estate really is amazing how fast you can kind of grow your equity within buildings. And then you can take out that equity with a cash out refinance and then go buy more and do it again and do it again. A lot of what real estate is rinse, wash, repeat. It kind of is. It's buy something, make it better, take the money back out, repeat. But just to dive into managing a little bit more, can you talk a little bit about Section 8 and any problems that you've ran into with that, and what you've learned about Section 8? Because a lot of people are afraid to even buy properties with tenants that are Section 8. And a lot of people hear Section 8 and they say, oh, those tenants are terrible, they're just bad. Like, I would never rent a Section 8. Can you just dive in a little bit about what Section 8 is and just kind of anything that you've learned from the process of dealing with them currently?
Yeah, I mean, Section 8, is essentially government assistance for rent. I can understand why some people might not like Section 8. It does require a lot more red tape. Usually it involves an annual inspection where they come by and require you to fix some items that need to be fixed, which honestly, you should be fixing them anyways, as a landlord. So that really doesn't scare me. Additionally, some of the benefits of Section 8 is it's guaranteed money. I mean, the state usually pays you a portion, the tenant usually pays you a smaller portion. That's usually how it works. What's also great about it is you constantly get rent increases according to inflation. So you don't have to argue with your tenant for a rent increase. It kind of happens automatically. Lastly, and another fantastic benefit is usually Section 8 tenants stay a while, right? So as a result, you have lower vacancy. And then lastly, you have the ability to negotiate with Section 8 to get the rents closer to market. So for example, with that 5-unit property, we had 3 bedrooms renting for $900. Market on that's $1,900. We went to them, we told them, this is market, this is what you're paying. They agreed to pay $1,775 just by having a conversation with them. We rented 1 bedrooms for, I think $800. Same situation. We had a conversation with them. They bumped up to $1,225 in 2 months. So within a 2-month period, just by having a conversation with Section 8, we brought the building's revenue from $4,000 to around $6,600. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So Section 8 is a great tool to get guaranteed rents, low vacancy, constant rent increases, but you do have to go through additional red tape. Additionally, you have to be patient with delays in administrative hurdles. I mean, usually things take a month, 2 months to take effect. So those are kind of some of the lessons I learned with Section 8.
Yeah. And I haven't had much experience with Section 8 at all. just because I try to avoid anything that's run by the government a little bit, because I just know the government is very slow. But there are definitely pros and cons to Section 8, and I've had a lot of people that I've met that invest and just particularly only do it with Section 8 because they like that. They like that it's constant. Like they know the rent check's going to come in. They don't have to deal with people not paying rent. They always get paid. So there's definitely benefits. There's pros and cons to everything. And I mean, it's good that you've learned those lessons, so now you can possibly incorporate it in the future and not be afraid of it.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, it's slow, but it also is guaranteed, right? That's why people invest in treasury bonds. It's low interest rate, but it's as safe as a bet as you can make it. I mean, if the U.S. government fails, everything's gonna fail, right? Same with Section 8. It's as guaranteed as it gets. I mean, the only way you're not gonna get paid is if the government shuts down. Which even during COVID, they came up and they provided relief. So your risk is very much reduced. So to your point, if you are trying to kind of have a balanced portfolio, it does make sense. I think Dion from Freedom Talk mentioned this, but it does make sense to have variety in your tenants. Maybe have some Section 8, maybe have some blue collar workers, some white collar workers, some people on disability or retirement. It just diversifies your risk among your tenant pool.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. It's cool how you can, like, people think about diversifying their stocks and like investments in stocks and stuff. So they do like some stocks, some bonds, some in the treasury, some in like gold or something. But you can also do that in real estate. You can find like very cash flowing properties. You can find properties that might appreciate a lot more and maybe won't cash flow as much. You can find properties for Section 8, so it's guaranteed rent. You can find properties without Section 8 that you can get more cash flow than maybe Section 8, but it's not as guaranteed. So it's cool how you can diversify within real estate as well, similar to stocks. And it's good to like understand all portions of it too. So it's cool. But all right. So what after this 5 unit? I know you're trying to obviously stabilize it and then cash out, refinance it. But what are you looking at for your next goals? Like, what's your vision for your long term, and what's your next step to get there?
So my vision over the next year is I would like to become a general partner on a syndication of a larger building. Rather than be an LP, I would like to be a GP and actually put the deal together. Additionally, I would like to add 20 units to my portfolio. I would like to double my portfolio. I currently have 18 units. And I'm hoping to do that by obtaining a 5 to 25 unit multi-family building, and preferably JV with 2 or 3 or 4 investors, and take a similar path to the 5 unit that I purchased that utilize some sort of value add component, preferably stabilizing the property due to bad management, and financing some money out and continuing the velocity of the money. But that's kind of my plan for 2023. My 10-year goal is I want about 100 units I own actively. I want about 1,000 units I syndicate. And I'm a big traveler, so I'd love to travel to 100 countries. And I would love to just kind of give back to people and kind of educate others on how they could achieve financial independence and create the life that they truly want to live.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I think the approach that you're going is the best way to get to financial freedom the quickest. You're taking big risks. You're going for bigger units, getting as many units as you can under contract, especially commercial wise. And I think that's a great area and a great approach to reach that financial freedom. So you can travel the world, go to 100 countries. How many countries are there?
I think it's over 200.
Like around 200 or so?
I believe so. Don't quote me on that.
You gotta hit 50%. You got it. 10 years, hit 50% of the world. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But I mean, to your point, I mean, I think real estate's all about becoming an expert in something very specific and just going all in on that. When you try to, when you have a laser focus on one asset class, one zip code, one market, opportunities just become visible that you didn't even know existed. When you have your focus spread all over every market, you're never going to know what a good opportunity is because you don't know what average, good, and great return is in that area because you're so all over the place. So I think to be successful in real estate, you really have to really niche down. Don't try to flip, don't try to do multifamily, don't try to do short-term rental all at once. Like pick something, become an expert at it, and maybe once you become an expert at it and you have it down to a formula, maybe move on to something else. But don't try to do 20 things at once. That kind of my advice with kind of how to take yourself to the next level and kind of scale quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we were talking about how as a realtor you have a certain niche. If you're trying to be good at everything, then you can't be great at one thing. So
exactly.
You have laser focus on one thing, and you can really expand and become the best at that. That's what's going to take you to the promised land, they say, or the financial freedom. But cool. Just to hop on to another question for you. What do you consider to be the biggest variable to expand your portfolio? So when you're thinking of your long-term goals, what is the biggest variable or something that you can do, like building your network, marketing, running numbers on properties? What is your number one biggest variable that you think will help you get to that point, and why?
The number one variable I think will help you get you to your goal is going back to the fundamentals of Rich Dad Poor Dad and understand to reach financial independence, you have to invest and not save. And the main principle I utilize with taking that concept was think like a hedge fund, right? So essentially what I did was I utilized lines of credit that I'm borrowing at 4, 5, 6% and transitioning that into assets that I'm getting 9, 10, 11% cash on cash return. So the biggest way to scale and to grow, in my opinion, is to know how to utilize borrowed money and transition that into assets that provide a higher return. That will truly make you scale, because otherwise you're going to have to sit there and save 20% of a $500,000 asset. I mean, I make six figures, and that would take me years to do.
Yeah.
So how else are you going to scale in real estate without utilizing and leveraging, the equity in your property or your network? But that's kind of my biggest tip with scaling quickly and expanding in real estate.
Yeah, you got to find ways to. It's kind of like a team. It's a team sport, real estate, in a way, because if you try to do it yourself, yeah, you can eventually get the financial independence or freedom, but it's just going to take a little bit longer, because if you have to save every single hard-earned dollar that you make into putting it to investments, you can do it, but yeah, it's going to prolong that. But if you work together with people, if you go into deals together, leverage other people's money, possibly, work with banks and find the best loan products to help you with lower down payment options, help you with better cash out refinances for your other properties to re-leverage that money into another asset. That's the best way to really quickly grow your portfolio. So that's awesome that you brought that up. I think a lot of people are a little afraid of that, but seeing you do it and seeing you explain how you are doing it, is cool. It's cool to shed light on that and show people that, it's not just you against, it's not just you out there trying to get your financial freedom. There's a ton of other people that within real estate that are trying to reach the same goal, and they'll work together with you. I mean, everybody's open-minded. Everybody wants to reach kind of a similar goal. And if you find people that you like to work with and partner with, then it's like a team sport. And that's why real estate it's pretty awesome and pretty fun.
Yeah, and I mean, when I mention that strategy to people always look at the risk associated with that. But there's always a safe way to do it. As long as you have sufficient reserves in some capacity, maybe you have a 401k to draw from. Worst case, maybe you could borrow money from your parents, but you got to have a backup strategy if you're going to utilize a strategy like this. So that's the key, is always have a plan B and always have a plan C in case things do fall through. But at the end of the day, if you're investing in cash flowing assets, they're going to be supporting themselves most of the time. So as long as you're leveraging that money into assets that self-sustain themselves, it's a very effective strategy in my mind. If you start leveraging that line of credit into riskier assets, maybe flipping or Airbnb in a recessionary environment, I would think that through. I would definitely think that I would definitely be very cautious of doing that unless you maybe have a mentor or somebody else that's done that before.
Yeah, that's for sure. So trying to wrap this up a little bit, let's bring it back to kind of the beginning, or just like dumb it down a little bit, not dumb it down a little bit, make it a little bit more understandable for maybe a new investor that's trying to get into real estate. What is your best piece of advice to a new investor that wants to get started in investing and managing their rental portfolio? Like what are your tips to getting into it? What's the best kind of path to get into it? And yeah, just kind of touch on that.
So my best tips for a new investor would be to utilize what I call the growth approach. So I cemented my scaling down to a 6-step approach under growth acronym: goals and timelines. So you want to kind of know your why, and you want to know how long you're going to get there. Like I said, my reason on why is I want to provide value to this earth. I want to provide impact to people. I want to live the life I truly want to live. That's kind of my why, and how long I wanted to plan on doing that was 5 to 10 years. So with that why and with that timeline, that's going to give me a good path on kind of what I need to do to get there. After that, I figure out what tools I have available, readily available tools. I do a self-assessment of what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, where my net worth lies. Maybe I have a fantastic network. Like what do I have going for me? And how can I leverage that to get me to the next level? After that, I operate under a niche. So I told you I'm the Worcester multifamily guy. That's what I focus on. That's all I see. That's all I do. And it's really kind of cemented me in this market for kind of multifamily sales and multifamily investments. Next, work like a hedge fund. Like I said, arbitrage, low cost debt into higher cash flowing assets. That's key to growing quickly. Take action. I mean, you could talk all day, but at the end of the day, you really need to take action, or you just got to ruminate about the possibility. Make your dream a reality. And lastly, this is one of the most important tips would be habits separate average from great. So, I mean, it's all about daily consistent action to get you to your goals, and ensuring habits surround those habits. So, for example, I use the Miracle Morning to realign myself with my goals every single morning, to meditate on my goals, to visualize, to journal, to exercise, to get me in alignment. That's kind of took me to the next level. So kind of with that growth approach, I think if people utilize that approach, they would have a good shot of scaling in, a good 3 to 5 years for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you actually sent me the Miracle Morning information on that, and I bought the book. I'm actually reading it right now because I'm going to start doing that. And I've never done the actual Miracle Morning, but there was times in my life where I did something similar to it after reading it a little bit. And when I was doing those steps, it actually just every single day just felt like it was better. Every single day I kind of had a better process, and I was getting stuff done, and I was less stressed out. I was more like, I felt more fulfilled. So I think, just if people want to look into that, I think it's very smart if they want to start doing that. You could join the what do they call it? The 5 a.m. crew.
Yeah. I mean, just the simple action of knowing what your year goal is, knowing what your 5-year goal is, knowing what your 10-year goal is, writing it out daily, and writing out 2 to 3 actions you can take to get you closer to that goal every single day. That's 95% of the battle right there. You do those 5-10 minute tasks to get you to your goal, you'll be surprised in a year what you've accomplished. Yeah,
and people need to realize that real estate it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you're not going to hop into real estate and all of a sudden, boom, you're financially free. You got to take individual steps. You got to take small bites to, get to where you want to be. And every single little step that you take, it's just going to get you further and further along. And all of a sudden, you're going to realize it's like a snowball effect. So then it starts really rolling, and then you'll just start finding deals, and you'll start making more money, But of course, the initial hop into real estate is that first deal is usually the hardest because you're a little new, so you don't really know if you're doing the right thing. And then you're learning a lot. So you're learning about, homes, you're learning about houses, you're learning about, plumbing, electricity, you're learning about tenants, you're learning about rules of being a landlord. So the first deal is always the hardest just to jump in. But, the biggest thing that I would say for myself too is just you just got to jump into things. You just got to go do it, get it started, and then learn as you're doing it. But with real estate, you also want to make sure that the numbers are pretty correct before you do jump in. But if the numbers seem good enough, just jump into real estate and just learn, because the first property, the first investment that you do, it's not really about making a ton of money. It's just about breaking even and learning as much as you possibly can to help you in the future. And I think Andrew can attest for that as well, for sure.
Yeah. My last tip for kind of new investors out there is don't bank on cash flow. Utilize your W-2 as long as possible. Utilize to get the best loans. When you do buy an investment property, keep the money in there. You'd be surprised how much money these properties take to upkeep. That cash flow is simply a defensive mechanism to keep the property, to make sure it's well run, to make sure it's in good condition. And it's essentially, a forced savings bank. So for all my properties, I have always kept the cash flow in the property and lived off my W-2. And at the end of the day, that's delayed gratification. I know in the future, I'm going to be thankful for that, and I'll be thankful for where my portfolio is.
Yeah, absolutely. Delayed gratification is huge. Delaying, it's basically, just what Andrew said. So it's like you're getting all this new cash flow coming in, just keep on keeping it in the process, in the business, to continue growing. Don't pay yourself too quickly. It's kind of like we were touching on in the beginning of this. Like if you get a raise at your job, a lot of people go and, buy a new car or get new clothes or new appliances or something like that. If you just delay that and just keep living where you're at right now, as you're gaining momentum and getting more cash flow and getting more income, it's going to propel you even further than you can imagine. But it's all about just delaying that gratification, living a little uncomfortable, and then, all of a sudden you'll find yourself financially independent. So other than, we touched on reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, obviously, and we touched on Miracle Morning, which is another great book. But what are some other books that you would recommend to someone to read? I know that you love reading, and just let us know what's a good book to start with.
So the more you work on yourself, the more likely your reality is you're gonna create the reality you want. So a lot of the books that I really enjoy are kind of mindset oriented and kind of working on becoming the best version of myself, and then my external reality will follow. So one book that really had an impact on me, and really taught me how to be an effective and kind and empathetic person, was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or Individuals, not quite positive on the title, by Stephen Covey. That book was a game changer. That really gives you a kind of a game plan on how to live a fulfilling and rewarding and effective life. And that book really provided inspiration throughout my journey. Additionally, one of my other favorite books is Think Like a Monk, by, I'm not quite sure who, but that was a fantastic book, and that really taught kind of breathing techniques, empathy, kindness, and kind of treat as everybody with dignity and respect. Which, at the end of the day, that's kind of real estate. At the end of the day, is a people business. And as long as you treat, your tenants or your clients with empathy and respect and address their issues in a timely manner, that resolves 99% of issues in real estate. So those kind of be some of the big takeaways, the big books that really had an impact on me.
Yeah, I mean, people do realize, sometimes they fail to realize that real estate isn't just it's not like a business just about buildings. It's a people business. So you're dealing with people that are living in your properties. Understanding how to communicate with them correctly and, be just a better person overall morally, be more likable and just, work with the tenants. It's going to help you more in the long run rather than just treating them like a number and then just trying to, boost their rent to help you. I think karma is real. And if you come into real estate and you're just, buying buildings, literally kicking people out on the streets, trying to fill it like exactly where you want it to be, it's going to bite you in the butt down the line. So I hope that more investors that come into real estate are more moral and just actually like to help people, because it is a people business for sure.
Yeah, I mean, every new building I take ownership of, I go to the current tenants and I ask them, like, what can I do to make your state better here? Is there anything bothering you in your unit? And sometimes it's as simple as changing a faucet, a couple $100, but you'd be surprised how much goodwill that buys, right? Like if you have an issue with that tenant, they call you quickly, they treat your unit right, they pay you on time, they show you empathy and respect. So just doing things like that makes a big difference in this industry. And then lastly, most people don't really think of real estate as customer service, but I absolutely do think of it as a customer service business. And I try to provide my tenants the best living experience possible because other landlords, the barrier is so freaking low. You could offer subpar service and be in the 90 percentile of best landlords. So I like to be in that top percentile. So people want to rent from me. They appreciate my units and they treat them as such.
Yeah, exactly. And they actually will continue to pay you rent because, I've heard so many stories about, they call them slumlords, like landlords that really just don't care at all about their properties. They just treat the tenants like numbers. But if you treat your tenants that way, like if you're actually not a good person to your tenants and not a good landlord, then they're going to reciprocate that right back to you. They're going to treat you like a crappy landlord and they're not going to pay you rent. They're going to cause a lot of problems. They're going to destroy your units. They're going to, call the housing authority on you. They're going to find any reason to mess with you if you're not treating them correct. And they kind of have a right to, because it's your job to provide them with good housing and treat them, pretty well as a person. But yeah, it just goes to show that what you put in this world is what you get back out. So especially in real estate as well.
And some people might not initially see the return on investment of being a good person, but I'll give you a quick example. I own 18 units. I haven't dealt with one eviction, and people might say, oh, you're lucky. Oh, that's eventually going to happen. But that's a direct result of me being a good person and me, just trying to provide a great experience to my clients. At the end of the day, I had some people leave, they damaged the unit slightly. I could have held money in the security. I didn't. I gave it back and I gave them their full security because I just appreciate they left my unit in relatively decent condition, didn't fight with me in the process, and were pleasant to deal with. I mean, I would pay a premium for that all day.
Yeah, for sure. And that's awesome. I mean, it just goes to show if you keep treating people the right way, they're going to treat you back the right way. So I'm hoping you don't get any evictions because those are definitely a pain in the butt.
I probably have one coming up for that 5-unit, but that's just a result of the tenant being ridiculously below market.
Yeah, and you inherited the tenant. So I mean, they were already in there. So it's a tenant that you didn't fill and you didn't build a rapport with. Yeah.
And I did offer them cash for keys, so I tried. So.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you offer them as much as you can, but if it comes down to it, the tenant ultimately can decide, like, I want you to evict me, and you're like, okay, here we go with this process.
Exactly.
But all right, to wrap things up, I just want to give you kind of a minute or two to say anything that you'd like to share with the audience, like your social media handles. I know you run a meetup, so if you want to give some insight on that for people to possibly go check out in Worcester, it's great. I've been there before. I presented there. It's a fabulous meetup, and it keeps on growing and growing. So if you want to touch on those a little bit, where people can find you, contact you, and a little bit about your meetup, that'd be great.
Thanks, Wendell. I appreciate the platform. So I host a local monthly meetup in Worcester every third Wednesday of the month at the Worcester Beer Garden from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. We usually have a good crowd, 40 to 50 people, all investors in the area. And we tend to have a guest speaker, a local investor that provides, insight into syndications or flips or whatever they're doing. So it's a really good educational experience, and it's completely free. The whole goal is to provide education and impact other people in the power of real estate investing and achieving financial independence. Regarding my social platforms, I'm on Instagram, Investor Freed. You can find me on LinkedIn, Andrew Freed. You can find me on Facebook. I'm always trying to put out content to provide value to others on multifamily investing. And I'm also an agent. So if you're looking for an investment property or a house hack in the Worcester market, always feel free to reach out. Like I said, you can find me on Instagram. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, social. I'll be happy to definitely see if I can help you achieve your goals.
Awesome. Yeah. And Andrew does post a lot of really good information on Instagram and it's Facebook and stuff as well. So if you give him a follow, everything that he posts is very informational and it'll just give you a little stepping stone to becoming a better investor. Everything that he learns, he tries to put out just to help people learn about real estate more and investing and try to avoid some lessons that they don't need to learn because he can already tell you about it. And then as well as with his meetups there, it's one of the best meetups in, I think, Massachusetts, especially Worcester. It's growing so fast and the amount of speakers that he gets there's some very high level speakers, some people with like 500 plus units, some people doing development in Boston, doing development in Worcester. You get to hear from all angles. Even you get to hear from people that just have like a couple house hacks. So you get to hear from the low level investors that just are getting started all the way to ones that are syndicating, 1,000 unit properties. So it's really cool to be able to go and meet everybody there. There's usually like 40 to 50 people and you just can build your network, and people say your network is your net worth. And that's one of the best places to go to do that.
Absolutely.
But all right. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. I think we'll wrap this up. We got a whole lot of information out of you. I think we could squeeze out a little more, but I don't want to keep on going and waste too much more of your time. I know you're busy. You gotta go out and maybe walk some properties or see some units. But yeah, it was great talking with you, and I appreciate you sharing all the insight and information on your story so far. And I think people will definitely get a lot of knowledge from this and a lot of insight and learn a lot.
Yeah, and thank you for creating this podcast and providing value to the world.
I'm trying, man. It's cool that you're number one. So we'll have to have you back on, and maybe in like a year or so, and then you'll be at like 50 units, and you can tell us about a syndication that you did. That's the goal.
Looking forward to it.
Let's get it. All right.